Welcome to this new episode of Matnum for May 2025. We immediately start with the keywords for the word hunt. So 3 words randomly chosen from the Photo Collective website. This month it's member, discussion, and age. And you can go hunt alone or with friends for photos that would correspond to those words, combine them or not, and then post those hashtags online and on social media or not if you want. It's just an exercise to go and practice photography. And yeah, so anyways, let's continue directly with the first virtual film contact sheet from ViCa. So ViCa has been producing those contact sheets for you to really feel again the feel of film and the way you take pictures with your smartphone. So here I kind of found interesting that virtual roll of film. Here, as you can see, some details. One on the left, that's with a flash. The way basically this mix of Bomber Baba and FJ and 02, or this performance on the right, I kind of really liked the way this combination with the variator values, which are all included in the QR code before. I'm going to show it again at the end of this series, but here again, performance that's in Space Odyssey in Reykjavík on the left. That's a small detail of a street in Reykjavík 2 on the right. The way it sort of creates those color zones and reconstructs, creates its own artifacts and aliasings simply because of the computational procedure involved in the algorithms. Here's those 2 other pictures, small details. I think it's an interesting virtual film. Basically, here again with this sunset, we can see this transformation of the color zones, or this bus. I think that's in Frankfurt, or here this geese, or those 2 walkers. I think it's an interesting mix of presets that gives us this virtual film stock. And here's the contact sheet again, and the QR code if you want to use it in one of the 4 compatible apps, which is ViCa, Camare, Digital Pola, and DarkCam. Second virtual film roll, that's with RDR and MEDCC. A longer format camera chosen on ViCa. And immediately here, what we can see is really this sort of very digital grain that comes from the filmulator, but at the same time, those really contrasty color maps. That's the Bay of Geneva, the Rad de Genève in Switzerland. Or here, that's a detail of a grain silo in the state of Vaud, also kind of Midwest Switzerland. You can see also that the sky, the way RDR manages highlights, it sort of goes back. Some kind of posterization, dims back the luminosity, gives for those kind of dramatic looking skies. Or here, simply details. I kind of like doing photos the vertical way when they're really long, so weird aspect ratios, but I think it's interesting in terms of composition to practice like this. Or here again, a detail that's Eau Vive train station in Geneva. Or here a performance at the Museum of Contemporary Art in Copenhagen. Always, I think it's interesting, those films. I think both of those film rolls I started in end of November. It's written on the contact sheet. And really, it really took me a while to finish the rolls. And it's interesting how you rediscover the photo after so many months. So I was really trying when I did this app to bring you the experience of having a roll in a camera and forgetting about it and continuing until you've finished and develop. Here's at the bar in Copenhagen, or here the west coast of Reykjavík. Again, I think interesting mix of those 2 in saturator and filmulators and variator values, which you'll have in the QR code. Hopefully you'll like it. As we can see here also, by the way, there's a small bug in that version of ViCa I have. I'm on it, so if you're a user, don't worry. Now we're going to finish the months with going to Camare and the random preset generator. So that was a concert in a church in Reykjavík by those 2 great musicians. Actually, they're playing this sort of clavinet organ. I don't know how to name that. That's electronified, so it's controlled by computers. So it's basically a mix of electronic stimulation and algorithms and actually mechanical renderings through the instruments of the music. Very interesting concert. Kind of like the rendering of that preset. That's Bomber Baba and Pola Laurel. Or here, basically two pictures. On the left, that's Tom Manuri, this artist that's in Reykjavík, playing at Space Odyssey. If you follow my other series, you've already seen the equivalent photos with some more traditional cameras. I do like this RD Papier rendering with this kind of crumpled paper, and here the use of this insaturator, making it really kind of more black and white, so that's Bewi. I think it works pretty well. Or here in the middle and right, that's the same photo through the experimental editor of Camare. In the middle, you have Dolces. It kind of smoothens and softens the color contrast. And above this, you have MEDCC that pixelates kind of low-resolution digital cameras. And on the right, again, RD Papier as a filmulator, but here DNAS for the color rendering. So different aspects, but I found interesting. Or here, that's going to be two pictures wide frame from the west coast of Reykjavík. One was Gullball as an saturator with those weird color, yellowish, purplish color zones. And Katie had in 200 plus as a filmulator. Or here through the editor, experimental editor, using Bewi as an insaturator and Katie might see CD, you get this kind of very different rendering of that west coast of Reykjavík. Here are all the QR codes for the last 6. Let's continue a little bit more and have a few more virtual presets. I kind of like this brush of grass in the middle of nowhere. On the left, that's using Crunchy. That has this tendency to create those weird color zones and makes the rest kind of black and white. Or simply in the middle, that's Bewi, going to black and white. And two very different ways of understanding diminished color palettes, which I found interesting. I will find that more interesting if used in ViCa as a virtual film stock, but I'll put the QR codes for you if you want to do that. And on the right, that's Rondi with KD Edit 100, this kind of very soft, old school rendering of colors, a little bit oversaturated. Or again, going to Crunchy on the left, that's this large church in Reykjavík. Or in the middle, Ondo as insaturator, really very different rendering. Or on the far right, using MapLade, which in this case makes everything very dark and blue, which I found interesting. And the film editor, which is KDC100N, adds a little bit of analog feel to the grain. I thought it was an interesting rendering. Here's the 6 QR codes. Or taking the same picture as before, I was talking the last one, through the experimental editor of Camare, going to black and white was Bewi, and having KD APS null 200 here. You get something very different, way more luminous, and that's just, by the way, that's the south coast of Iceland. Or in the middle, that's Manchester, the Manchester airport, if I'm correct. And there was this sort of weird circus near the practice zone of the airport where they practice for first aid response. So it was, I don't know, I kind of liked that picture. Or very boring, but this pigeon with the rendering, which is kind of soft, but I liked actually the softness. It's Safrano and KDAPS null 200. Yeah, well, nothing more to this, but the vibes went okay for me. Or here's the same pictures through the experimental editor of Camare. 3 different ways. One with Harate, which really distorts the geometry. On the left, in the middle, Dolce, again softening and making, kind of decreasing the color contrast. Or on the right, Semi, with this sort of ghosts image above. the tower. I guess that's in Manchester. I think in the French version of this video I said it was London, but I think it's Manchester. And here's the 6 QR codes if you want to use one of those. Here again, a picture put through the experimental editor of Camare to show you how very different those rendering can be between, on the far left, arguable, which kind of makes everything kind of crisp. D and AZ in the middle, which will make those weird map-like transformations in the sky. You can see it with the clouds. You kind of lose the definition of many things, and the color palette is kind of crunchy, even though it's not crunchy, because there's of course the insaturator named Crunchy, but that's not the case. That's D and AZ. Or on the right, that's Haben. And with KDT32 getting rid of the color palette on the far right, the more classical way of seeing everything. I thought it showed how different the drama can be in the representation of your photography when you're using those filters. And yeah, here are I forgot before going to QR codes. Here are 2 pictures of the same building. That's the 3 pictures are in Manchester as well, the 2.5. You recognize those buildings, those brick buildings, quite common in many cities in the UK. And I really like the 2 different renderings of this building, either with Rondi on the left with this kind of blurry aspect, but still some definition, or this more crisp, effective DNAZ in the middle. Or on the far right, that's HDR. You recognize those really increased contrast color palettes of a street in Manchester on a sunny day. Here, finally, the 6 QR codes if you want to use them in your own apps. And 3 more pictures, 2.5 more pictures. On the left, that's a bar in Manchester. I kind of like the rendering of Kainswo and KD Edit 100 set like this in this low light situation. And of course, for those who follow my other series like Serial, you will have recognized this window. And I thought those 2 versions through the experimental editor of Camare were interesting. A very different way of representing the light going through this window. And yeah, so here are the QR codes if you're interested in using one of those. Hopefully that was kind of a little entertaining, but most importantly, hopefully it kind of stimulates you to go take pictures, even with your smartphone, and be creative, and hopefully entertaining, but don't hesitate to comment, suggest, propose, and yeah, catch you next time.